Karen Miller, sister of Flo Massendale, passed away October 7th. She was also the mother of Kansas Riley, who was a former member. Mary Ellen Kate is at home on hospice. Guy's Wild Night Out has been canceled and rescheduled to early 26. Typo here. Gotta laugh. 20,026. Don't think we'll make that far. Our clothing drive starts November 1. You can start bringing clothes back there October 13th. Work days October 25th. Fall festivals October 19th. It's going to be at Green Valley for the whole congregation. I assume that's the Sunday night. Veterans Day celebration is Tuesday, November 11th. And the Singing Men of Arkansas will be here. And I think there's 2 guest speakers. Sunday after worship, care groups 2, 8, and 10 will have their potluck. New members, guests are invited also to always attend those. Food supplies, gift cards, checks were put on the food truck Monday, October 6th. Thank you to everybody for doing that. And those are great for success for all of God's children. Thank you, sir.
Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the opportunity to be together tonight. So grateful for the opportunity to study your word. Grateful for Paul and his ability to make this book of Revelation come alive to us and his insights. We just pray that we will all be blessed by being here today, and our knowledge will be increased. And thank you so much for loving us and taking care of us. We pray this in Jesus' name.
Okay, oops. That may be a little bit too loud. Okay, testing 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Is that still okay? Yeah. Can you down this a little bit, maybe? Okay. They're saying okay. Okay. If that will work, I don't want to blast you out of here. There may be those who are here tonight that weren't here last week. You can come by later, and I've got a handout that kind of is an overview schedule, breaks down the various levels of the book, and you might like to have a look at it. So anyway, they're here tonight, for after class if you'd like to come by and grab one real quick. Okay. Well, I'll just leave it there. This is where we stopped last week, talking about the famous 144,000, which some groups try to take literally, that there will be only 144,000 saved, which really kind of cuts into the hope of many. But we were pointing out that one thing, that this should not be taken literally as a numbering of the tribe of Israel, because it's not accurate. It's not. There are names mentioned, Levi and Joseph, that are not normally listed among the tribes of Israel. So that makes it's not meant to be a literal rendition of the tribes of Israel. And the idea also that 1,000, 12 and 12 is 144. So yet we already had the 12 apostles and the 12 leaders of the tribes, patriarchs. So you take that and you multiply it by 1,000, and then 1,000, we said in the Old Testament and all the way through the New Testament, really, the 1,000 was used as the ultimate number. And we said that today we have inflation. You'd have to say at least 100 million or maybe a billion, or, to get anything going. I'm suddenly his name left me, the famous senator from Illinois. He mentioned that about Washington, D.C., that up in Washington, he was a senator, that in Washington, D.C., it was $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and eventually added up to real money. So this is the idea here, though, that 1,000. So we're looking at 144,000 as the totality of those that will be saved. Okay? Pardon? Symbolic. That's right. Symbolic. Okay. Now we're going to see some of these. And after this, I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one can number. So that already breaks the previous idea that it's going to be limited to 144,000. Because it says here, he sees a multitude that nobody can number. From every nation, from all the tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palms of victory, or palm branches. And this was symbols of victory, celebration. Remember, they wove those when Christ did his triumphal entry. So, these are the saved, the great multitude that are being saved. And they were all crying out with a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits upon the throne and to the Lamb." And all the angels were standing around the thrones, and all the elders of the four living creatures, and they fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God. Saying, "Amen. Let it be it so. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen." So you can see again, here are 7. Blessing, glory, wisdom, thanksgiving, honor, power. 7 attributes again, 7 blessings. And then one of the elders addressed me, saying, "Who are these clothed in white robes? From where have they come?" And I said to him, "Sir, you know." He said to me, "These are the ones coming out of the great tribulation." And we're going to be talking about this tribulation as time goes on. And it'll be something that they will be anticipating then, okay? They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore, they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more. The sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. We'll come back to that also as another vision later on. This also brings up something, kind of reminds you also of Psalm. Well, it does, Psalm 101, verse 6, what it's quoting actually. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. Now, verse 15 is also interesting. They are before the throne of God, and they serve him day and night in his temple, and he who sits on the throne will shelter him. Now, they serve him day and night in his temple. You wonder why people who don't really want to go to church or be a part of the congregation, any kind of congregation, or serve God here on earth, would want to serve God in heaven. So if you're not going to, if you're not interested in serving God here on earth, I don't think you'd be very excited about going to heaven where you'd serve God day and night forever. So I think that's an interesting thing when we think about it. We are preparing here for what's going to be in heaven. We will be, I don't know how we will serve God, but we will serve him in whatever way he asks us to in heaven. One of my old professors who was a real bibliophile, a book lover, he said he hoped that when he got to heaven, God would put him in charge of heaven's library. Close, W.B. West Jr., who is dean of the graduate school. And I like that. I mean, God is going to give us some kind of meaningful work. We're going to serve him in heaven. And in spite of all the cartoons we see, I don't think we're going to be sitting around on clouds all day just strumming on a harp or whatever and whatever. But he's going to give us some meaningful service for him. For the Lamb in the midst of the throne will be their shepherd, and he will guide them to springs of living water, and God will wipe every tear from their eyes. And of course, this brings up, remember, Psalm 23:1, that he will bring us and lead us beside still waters. In this case, it'll be the waters of life that we'll see in heaven. And the idea of this joy of he will wipe every tear from their eyes. And we'll learn later on, no more parting, no more separation. Well, now we get to chapter 8. Yes, ma'am.
Back in verse 14, it's such a contrast when he says they washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb.
Yeah.
You get your robe white by washing it in his dark red blood.
Yeah, I thought about that too. There is a kind of a interesting concept there. We are made white by the red blood of Jesus.
He goes to the symbol of colors and white.
Yeah. White is purity and blood is a symbol of sacrifice. So yeah, that's a good thing to point out. It crossed my mind, I just went by it. But that's good, thank you. There's an interesting contrast there, interesting juxtaposition in a way. Okay, now in chapter 8, we're going to kind of get down to business, you could say. Because this is going to be now where the angels will begin to sound the trumpets. But before this happens, there's going to be an ominous silence. And then we will hear the beginning of the trumpets, and another angel will appear with the prayers of the saints as God prepares to remember the pleas of his people. And when the Lamb opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. Now, why silence? Pardon? Okay. Doesn't silence sometimes kind of heighten the anticipation? That silence can be just as powerful as noise, sometimes maybe more powerful. And so we talk about these silences that are dramatic silences to add that tension. Yes, sir, in the back.
I kind of imagine when Ezekiel fell to his knees, he wasn't yelling. I imagine he was silent.
Yeah.
When he fell to his knee in awe.
That's right. When things like this are so powerful that there is silence, yes. So this is, a moment of preparation as God now is beginning to prepare John for some ominous things coming. And then I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. Amos, again, these trumpets have a purpose too. Amos 3:6, is a trumpet blown in the city and the people are not afraid? Trumpets were used then as signals, just like even more recently. When I don't think I've ever heard one here. Do we have a tornado siren here in town? Pardon?
We don't need them here, obviously.
Oh. Pardon? We do have them?
We have them in prayer warriors.
Well, they're very few and far between.
I don't remember hearing one here. Now, in Searcy, we had one every Wednesday at noon. We had the tornado siren go off as a test. And we used to laugh if a tornado ever comes at noon in Searcy, no one will pay any attention to it. But anyway, things like this are, again, the idea of alerting the people. And so these trumpets are going to be sounding and to get people's attention. Wake up, listen. And another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to offer with the prayers of the saints on the golden altar before the throne. Psalm 141, verse 2, let my prayer be counted as incense before you. I think this is one of the more beautiful images we see come across here in Revelation. But again, the prayers of the saints are like incense before God. It's mentioned elsewhere. Also, we'll see in a minute, and the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints rose before God and from the hand of the angel.
It's interesting to me that wording says that the angel offered the prayers of the saints.
Well, he's a servant of God doing this, swinging the incenser, yeah. And 2 Corinthians says, for we are the incense of Christ to God among those who are being saved and among those who are perishing. We are the sweet aroma, another place says. The aroma of Christ. So, in other words, when we go out into the world, we should try to be pleasing to others. Because we may be the only ones they ever come in contact with, and if they don't see Christ in us, if we make a stink, I've got to stop here and relate. We had a man come and speak to a class when I was at Harding. And, anyway, he was talking about when he was studying for his doctorate. He was up in Indiana at one of the schools there, State University. And also there in Indiana is the Hebrew Union, one of the biggest Jewish graduate schools, major colleges, universities for the Jews, Hebrew Union University. Well, anyway, they had a big conflab, I guess, a coming together and Hebrew Union brought in a renowned Hebraic scholar to speak, a rabbi. And one of the things he was going to speak on then was Christian-Jewish interrelations and relationships and, whatever. And anyway, the man said he gave a very good speech and then asked for questions, and there were some questions. And finally, one of the guys that were, you might say, one of the Christian students who was there, one of the Christian doctoral students, said, raised his hand and he said, well, Rabbi, wouldn't it be true to say that the main blockage or the main problem between Jews and Christians is that the Christians still look at the Jews as those who crucified Christ? And he said, the rabbi stood there and thought and said, and there was a pause. And he said, yes, I think that's true. It is true that the Jews crucified Christ. It's also true that the Christians have disgraced him. And he said, any more questions? It's a powerful statement. The Jews may have crucified Christ, but the Christians have disgraced him. We can't do that, brother. I don't know about you, there are times on TV when I see certain people get on TV and they're talking about, blah, 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 blah. And I think, oh my goodness, here we go again. They're just, they're giving across the idea that Christians are a bunch of crazy people, and of course, in our modern world, you can go to movies and you have all these villains or sometimes crazy people acting different ways and whatever. And they can't be Jewish, they can't be Muslim or sometimes or anything, but they can be a preacher. So, Hollywood has done its best, I think, also to sometimes just bring shame and reproach. So anyway, I think this is very interesting. We are to be the incense of Christ. We should try as best we can to overcome all these cultural negatives and present a pleasing aroma to those about us as they see us living the Christian life. Okay, any other questions, comments? Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, rumblings, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. This is, to impress, okay? They're setting a stage. Something very important significant is happening here. Now, I think what we're going to see in this first round of the trumpets, this is mainly God showing us the power he has over nature and how he has used nature to wake up man. In fact, this chapter and the next chapter, it's going to get even more vivid in the next chapter. And we're going to bring out some things here that God has all through history used nature as his messenger. And I just thought I should have put that in here, really. In the Proverbs, in the Psalms, it says, his messengers are the wind and the flame of fire. So God can speak in nature, can he not? So we're going to see that all through history. And last week, if you remember, I even mentioned this about when we had the tornado hit us in Memphis, and our professor, Jack Lewis, said, God heard a lot of new voices last night, didn't he? Because in times of tribulation, trouble, suddenly we remember, hey, I need God's help here. So these are going to be, God is going to be showing us his power, and primarily now through nature. Okay, the seven prepared to blow, and the first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth. What does that sound like to you? Pardon? Okay, but hail and fire. Where did we remember where something hail fell? The plagues against Egypt. Remember, it says, and the hail fell and ran like fire upon the ground. So, again, reminiscent of God using nature. He used those plagues back then to try to wake up the Egyptians. Well, here's another round, people, brothers and sisters. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. So a third, this isn't destruction, total destruction. We hadn't gotten there yet. But it's enough to try to get man's attention. I think that's what we're looking at through here. God constantly trying to bring man around to look who you're dealing with. There's something bigger out here than you. And the second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire, was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, again reminiscent of Moses. And a third of the living creatures on the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. That last bit kind of makes us understand you can send your ship out, but it may not come back. Lot of disasters on the sea, are there not? Again, realizing that there's a greater hand out there moving things. Learn not, this is kind of a side issue, how we're going to tie this in here, you'll see. Learn not the way of the nations, nor be dismayed at the signs of the heavens, because the nations are dismayed at them. Do we not see that a lot again on media and whatever? People wringing their hands. If there's a hurricane or an earthquake in Japan or something, you know, this is the end. Well, not yet, because remember, we've got to go back to Luke 21:9. And when you hear of wars and tumults, do not be terrified, for these things must first take place, but the end will not be at once. Jesus said to them, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be great earthquakes and in various places famines and pestilences, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. So there's going to be a lot of activity. People used to be terrified at comets, if you remember that. Comets used to be harbingers of death, especially for kings. Anyone here ever had a close look at the Bayeux Tapestry, which was prepared for the invasion of England, or after the invasion of England, the Bayeux Tapestry? William the Conqueror, 1066, invaded England and took over England. He invaded from France and took England. The Bayeux Tapestry was created then. It's a huge, long tapestry. And right in the middle of the tapestry, there's a comet. And the comet's there because they said this was a harbinger of change, of the death of kings, and a new king coming. So all through history, people have looked up to heaven and they've seen all these signs and wonders, and they've made all kinds of things about them. But Jesus is saying, don't be afraid. These are natural things. And there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and on the earth distress of nations and perplexity because of the roaring of the seas and the waves. People fainting with fear, with foreboding of what is coming on the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So he's telling us, all right, there's going to be signs in heaven. There'll be eclipses and comets and meteor showers and meteors falling to earth and all kinds of things happening. But it's all this natural stuff that's going to happen. So there may even be world-shaking events, world-shaking things that happen, falling of empires and whatever. But that's not for you to worry about. God will take care of that. Now the third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell upon the third of the rivers and on the springs of water. And the name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died because of this, because it had been made bitter. We might take this as a warning ourselves of pollution. That waters have been polluted in the past and caused great distress. Cholera once was a scourge of the world because it's carried by water. And typhoid, and other diseases like this. So there is a possibility that in nature, as you can see here, this is an attack on the springs of water, sweet water, not salty water, but river water, spring water. And wormwood. Wormwood, we still have wormwood today. You can get sometimes the plant wormwood at Lowe's for spring planting. Just to bring it up here, it comes from the Greek absinthos. This is a picture of it, and it was used to make a drink called absinthe. Absinthe. It was also sometimes called the green devil, this drink. It, given enough, well, in the early days, you can buy absinthe today that's been toned down. It got so bad for a while there that the governments of several countries, including the United States, banned it because they weren't treating it carefully. And wormwood, if it's put in as an additive and the sap gets out and whatever and flavors the thing, it will cause bad hallucinations and mental illness and no telling what. Guess who was a fond drinker of absinthe? Edgar Allan Poe drank absinthe. So you think, Edgar Allan Poe had a few little things going for him, didn't he? Well, okay. But this is the idea of wormwood, that it was a dangerous plant. And so the people back then knew it, and that's why he's using it as an example of how the waters could be poisoned. Okay? The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light might be darkened, and a third of the day might be kept from shining, and likewise a third of the night. Again, natural phenomena in the evenings. Not total, but just a lot of things going on. And the idea that it be darkened. You think about this, under paganism, people did dwell in darkness, spiritual darkness. And they lived in constant fear of all kinds of natural phenomena. And they tried their best to try to move stuff in natural, get meaning out of natural phenomena. So this is part, I think, of the darkness that penetrated there. And then I looked and heard an eagle crying with a loud voice as it flew directly overhead. Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth at the blast of the other trumpets that the three angels are about to blow. Okay, what he's saying is it's going to get worse before it gets better. Okay. We've kind of seen God acting through nature. Now he's going to act even through more powerful means. Chapter 9. The sounding of the fifth trumpet, the angel of the bottomless pit is unleashed upon mankind. And the problem here, what we're going to see here is that mankind is going to continue to worship this hellish beast, hellish creature, angel, with fearsome consequences for humanity and for nature and humanity. So we're going to give a look at this now. A lot of background for you. Romans 1:28-32. And since they did not, this is kind of a lead-in to kind of see what he's talking about here, okay? And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. And they were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They were full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, and disobedient to parents. Interesting he throws that in there. foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like today? Yeah, I mean, first century, but these are things we can, once we understand that they're looking at it, but we can also begin to draw lessons for our own time, too. Some of this sounds almost too eerily contemporary, does it not? That much of our world today, they put on a real show, I mean, to see how wicked they can be. And then more approval of it. So, and they get it, yeah, that's even worse than it here. And they even get approval. And that's even more tragic. You see all these celebrities and the way they act sometimes, the way they live, and these are the examples that the world is putting forth, our culture is putting forth for our children. And that's the real tragedy. And the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. How are you fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn, which in Latin is Lucifer? How are you cut down to the ground? Isaiah 14:12, speaking of him. And Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Luke 10:18. Okay, we go back to Job, and God was having a meeting of the angels or whatever, and Satan comes in. I mean, he's very brazen. He comes right there before God and challenges God about Job, of course. But now we see that we're going to be learning Satan is kicked out of heaven. Satan can't do that anymore. He doesn't have free reign to go like that anymore. But he was a star. I think he was the star fallen from heaven. And more than likely, Satan opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. We can see the bottomless pit as a symbolic of the depth of wickedness, which man's wickedness, which Satan exploits. Again, I don't think we need to go looking for a bottomless pit. This is symbolic, okay? It's symbolic of the depths of wickedness that man can plunge into and that Satan encourages and exploits. The smoke, of course, Satan does his best to blind men to their wickedness, as we're just seeing from Romans. Not only do they not see it, they even think that what they're doing is good. They're blinded to the truth. So, in the trumpets that follow, we're seeing a powerful recounting of all Jehovah God has done through the ages to awaken mankind to his power, to bring them to worship him, even to allowing the unleashing of Apollyon upon mankind. Now, there are two words here. Apollyon, which is actually the Greek term here, meaning destroyer, and it comes from the related word in Hebrew, Abaddon, the destruction. So God is willing to unleash upon mankind. Did he not bring a flood at one time? To clean the world one time? And he said, what? I'm not going to do flood again, but I'll bring fire. Proverbs 27:20, the grave, Sheol, the grave and destruction are Abaddon, are never satisfied. And never satisfied are the eyes of man. So man is guilty of this destruction. Never satisfied. I could take you back to Europe in 1564, I believe it was, something like that. It was the end of 30 years of interfaith, interreligious fighting in Europe, called the 30 Years' War, between Protestants, the new Protestants, and the Catholics. The nation that had suffered most was Germany. But Poland and other nations were in their mix also. And they had fought each other for 30 years, taking over cities, burning crops, killing peasants. It was just 30 years. Germany was just literally brought to its knees in destruction. Well, finally in 1564, the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick said, we're not getting anywhere. The Catholics killed the Protestant kills the Catholics, and there are people getting in between and nothing has been settled after 30 years of this war killing. And so he met with the Protestant leaders at Westphalia, Germany, and they signed the Peace of Westphalia, ending the 30 Years' War. And he recognized the Protestants' right to exist, and the Protestants recognized the Catholics' right to exist. There was one person who was furious at this and sent word to the Holy Roman Emperor that he didn't want this peace. He wanted the destruction to continue. Guess who it was? The Pope. The Pope said, why are you giving in to these Protestants? Kill them all. And Frederick sent him word back, if you want to keep fighting, send your own army and fight it on your own land. My land is devastated. He said, my land is, there's nothing left to ruin. So if you want to keep fighting, just get your own army and fight in Italy. But again, some people are never satisfied. Never satisfied. Some wars just go on and on. We call them wars of attrition historically, where you just fight and fight and fight. No one can ever get the upper hand, and so eventually it's just, both sides just become so finally exhausted with killing each other that they just have to just finally stop. Because no one wanted to say quits beforehand. They could not be satisfied. So mankind has a lot to answer for. Yes, dear?
Do you think that the war between the Muslims in the form of Palestinians, the terrorist groups, that's been going on since, 1947? Is that when they?
Pretty much got started, yeah.
That's more than 70, I was born in 48, so that's 78 years that's been going on. Do you think that might come to an end now with Israel just leveling Gaza?
No. They may get that little conflict to end, but no, it's going to be continuing.
Those two groups exist.
As long as they're like two cats in a bag, they're going to keep doing it. Yeah.
It's been going on since 700.
Yeah, even farther back than that.
The Crusades, of course.
The Crusades were another good example of it. Yeah, the Crusades were another horrible example of it. So, mankind, it seems, as he's saying here, just are never satisfied. So the grave and destruction are never satisfied. God has used the destroying angel, so the destroying angel is not, I don't see him as Satan. The destroying angel is something different. because God has used the destroying angel. In Exodus 12:23, God promised that the destroyer would pass over. The destroying angel would pass over his people if they had a mark on their doorpost. You know, this is going to be an important concept we're going to see all through the book, that there will be marks. The mark is on the mark of Satan or the mark of Christ. We are marked people. And be thankful for it. Because that's what saved them at the Passover. They had to have the mark on the doorpost, which is a form of baptism, by the way, people. Because if you were outside that doorpost, you were lost. If you went inside and you passed through the blood to the interior, then you were saved. That's a type of baptism. 2 Samuel 24:16-17. After David repented, God stayed the destroying angel from attacking Jerusalem. It's a very vivid little chapter, end of the chapter right there. Remember, David was told, don't do a census, and he did it anyway, and God sent the destroying angel. And he said they looked it up and they could see the angel getting ready to strike Jerusalem. And David said, okay, I made a big mistake. And God stayed the hand. But there was a destroying angel. So God can do this. God can use the destroyer. So I'll give you some scriptures now. From the very beginning, God has made it very clear He will broach no competition. I know today it's popular and a lot of churches, synagogue, I don't know, whatever, to have God as kind of the warm, fuzzy teddy bear type God. You know, the indulgent grandpa type God. That's not what we see in the scriptures. Yes, God loves us, and He is a God of love, but He's also a God who demands something from us. When Moses wanted to see God, God passed before him. And here's the first time we really get to look at this. The Lord passed before Moses and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious and slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. But, here's that word, who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. Sin can have consequences. That's what he's saying. Now, he's not going to visit the sin in the sense here. It's the impact that the parents had. Some of we've had some people that I've known who worked with children, infants, in emergency rooms or where you have the little babies in the ICs. And one of them said the worst thing she could ever see were babies born to mothers who were drug addicts. And the baby had to undergo withdrawal. The baby was innocent, but he paid the consequences of his mother's actions. So he didn't carry the sin, but he carried the consequences. He received the consequences. We have to think about that sometimes. What we do will have consequences. Maybe for 2, 3, 4 generations. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I am the Lord your God. I am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. There's a condition. Keep my commandments. For you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name, and this is whose name is jealous. We don't think about that, do we? But that's one of the names. There's a one word there in Hebrew that's only, this word for jealous at that point is the only time it's ever used. It's only used for God. God's name is jealous. He is a jealous God. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. For the Lord your God in your midst is a jealous God, lest the anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. I mean, he's laying it on the line, isn't he not, people? The day of the wrath of the Lord and the fire of his jealousy, all the earth shall be consumed. For a full and sudden end, he will make all of the inhabitants of the earth, if he wants to. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom which cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. For our God is a consuming fire. Hebrews 12. So people say, oh, the New Testament is a different God. No, Jehovah, God is Jehovah God. He is still a consuming fire. He wants to show his love, and he has shown his love through Jesus Christ. But if we reject Jesus Christ, there is no more sacrifice for sin, we're told, is there? So, despite and regardless of all of God's efforts, mankind would rather worship and serve Satan with all the resulting evils which it brings, instead of turning to follow and honor God. Therefore, mankind will answer to God. And let's look at Amos. This is one of the most powerful scriptures, Amos 6, because it shows us exactly what we're talking about here and what's going to come in the idea of Revelation. God tells the people that Amos went to speak to, Israel, I gave you cleanliness of teeth in all your cities. I love that. I try to hear, what's he saying? What's cleanliness of teeth? Pardon? No food. If you don't have any food, if your teeth are clean. If you don't have anything to eat, it's famine. You don't have anything to eat, so your teeth are clean. Good, beautiful way of saying it, isn't it? And lack of bread in all your places. Yet you did not return to me, declares the Lord. Why did he do this? I'm trying to get your attention, people. Turn to me. You want bread? Ask me. Pray to me. Also, I withheld rain from you when there were yet 3 months to the harvest, critical time. I would send rain to one city and send no rain on another city. One field would have rain and the other field would wither. So 2 or 3 cities would wander to another city to drink water and it would not be satisfied. And yet you did not return to me, declares Lord God, O Israel. I struck you with blight and mildew, your many gardens and your vineyards and your fig trees and your olive trees, the locust devoured, and yet you did not return to me, declares the Lord. Sounds like some of those things we've already looked at when we talked about God sending those plagues upon Egypt, didn't we? I sent among you a pestilence after the manner of Egypt. I killed your young men with the sword and carried away your horses. I made you to made the stench of your camp go up into your nostrils. And yet you did not return to me, declares the Lord. I overthrew some of you as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and you were as a brand plucked out of the burning, and yet you did not return to me, declares the Lord. Therefore, thus I will do to you, O Israel, because I will do this to you. Prepare to meet your God, O Israel. That's ominous, isn't it? When he says, okay, prepare to meet me. You know, you've rejected me. Now you're going to have to stand in front of me. Now you're going to have to meet me. So prepare. Be prepared to meet your God.
Remember those signs on the side of the road out west or somewhere
Uh-huh.
travel somewhere, be prepared
Be prepared.
to meet your God.
God.
Yeah, it was
Uh-huh.
pretty powerful.
Pretty powerful. And then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given the power like the power of scorpions of the earth. And they were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. So these locusts are not locusts. These are symbolic again. Locusts are devouring, merciless animals that eat everything inside and bring all kinds. And so we can look maybe as these locusts as unnatural demons who come to afflict the men's minds and bodies. But God's children will be shielded. He who keeps, this is the positive side, we're shielded. He who keeps you will not slumber. Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. For the Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep you, your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. Now that's the people of God. But now in Ezekiel he says this, and the Lord said, pass through the city, through Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over the abominations that are committed in it. In other words, the people who are sympathetic to God and to the wickedness they see around them and they're upset by it. And to the others he said in my hearing, pass through the city after him and strike. Your eyes shall not spare, and you shall show no pity. And while they were striking and I was left alone, I fell upon my face and cried, Ah, Lord God, will you destroy all the remnant of Israel in the outpouring of your wrath on Jerusalem? And he said to me, the guilt of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great. The land is full of blood and the city full of injustice. For they say, the Lord has forsaken the land, the Lord does not see. As for me, my eye will not spare, nor will I have pity. I will bring their deeds upon their heads. So, again, he's laying it out there pretty clear. He demands obedience. So, the upcoming, these are descriptions, I think, of the torment of man when they worship these gods. And, at this moment, they're not being killed, they're just being tormented. And they were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days, people will seek death and will not find it. For they will long to die, but death will flee from them. In appearance, the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold, their faces like human faces. These may be, no telling, people dressed up and leading people astray. Looking good, but also fearsome. In other words, they're horrible to look at, but they have crowns that kind of seem to mask them in some way. They have human faces, but they're devilish. Their hair like women's hair, and their teeth like lions' teeth. So very, very dangerous to get involved with, these demons. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron. In the sense, they're kind of like locusts again. They're dressed with all this armor. Locusts are covered with these plates. And the noise of their wings was like the noise of many chariots with horses rushing into battle. And they have tails and stings like scorpions, and their power to hurt people for 5 months is in their tails. So it's not going to be, again, total destruction, but there'll be periods, off and on, periods of torment. Well, next time we will come back and we will talk about the king, the angel of the bottomless pit, Abaddon. So, one last thing, if I had an idea here real quick. People, I remember reading somewhere, some people were talking about the wings, the noise and all that. They said, oh, these must be helicopters. And I thought, well, that really makes a lot of sense to people in the first century, doesn't it? You know, watch out for the helicopters, you know.
Let's keep it in our tent.
Yeah, let's keep it a little more real than that. But anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. God bless. We'll see you next week, I hope.